Welcome to Best Horror Movie You Never Saw, where we talk about examining films that have flown under the radar or gained traction throughout the years, earning them a place as a cult classic or underrated gem that was either before its time and or has aged like a fine wine. Today, we're going to be discussing the cult horror satire Society from director Brian Yuzna. It's about a teenage boy named Bill Whitney, played by the improbably awesomely named Billy Warlock, who lives in Beverly Hills and feels alienated from his rich, waspy family, which includes his father Jim, played with appropriately douchey aloofness by Charles Lucia, his seemingly doting but shallow mother, played by Concetta D'Agnes, and his supportive ingenue sister Jenny, played with plastic sweetness by Patrice Jennings. While Bill's alienation often manifests itself in what at first seem like paranoid delusions and hallucinations, there are a lot of clues throughout the film that show how controlling and dismissive his family can be, such as Bill complaining about how his parents
They don't approve of me, okay? They don't accept my friends.
Oh, Bill, wasn't that Milo outside?
or Jenny talking about how she shouldn't date people that are
He just wasn't the right sort for me.
a statement that becomes more pointed when it's revealed that Bill's friend Milo, played by Evan Richards, is lower class, and Jenny's ex-boyfriend Daniel Blanchard, played by Tim Bartel, is explicitly shown to be Jewish, adding an uncomfortable layer of anti-Semitism to Bill's family, a horrifyingly common trait among the sort of 80s Reaganites at the time, a trait which Bill himself doesn't seem to share, even willing to hear him out when Daniel reveals to him that he has information about Bill's family and the secret society they're all a part of, something Bill has up to this point been completely unaware of.
God, this is excellent.
What the hell are they doing?
As Bill tries to uncover more about who or what his family actually are,
I want to know what happened to Blanchard. And I want to know what you did to my sister at her coming out.
as well as what the mysterious society even is,
You gotta listen to this tape.
Billy, something happened at home?
No, I'm not crazy. This is real.
things become more perilous, especially when Daniel and others who try to tell Bill about the conspiracy
It's imperative that I talk with you. It's about your parents, society.
end up dead. Which leads to what really makes this movie famous, or rather infamous, the shunting scene, where it turns out that Bill is in fact not the biological son of his waspy family,
I am not your mother.
Jesus, Bill, you never were one of us.
and ends up finding out that they are something not even human.
You're a different race from us, a different species, a different class.
Essentially, Bill has been raised seemingly from birth to be a sacrifice for the rich, here seen as nebulous leech-like creatures who literally suck the nutrients of the lower class.
Didn't you know, Billy Boy? The rich have always sucked off low-class shit like you.
The film finished production in 1989 and released in Europe, but was shelved for 3 years before being released in the US in 1992. It was ultimately a huge box office failure domestically, as it was deemed too weird and pretentious by critics and audiences in America. However, it was quite a success in Europe, and in an interview, director Brian Yuzna stated, "I think Europeans are more willing to accept the ideas that are in a movie. That's why, for example, Society did really well in Europe and in the US did nothing, where it was a big joke. And I think it's because they responded to the ideas in there. I was totally having fun with them, but they are there nonetheless." However, since its release, it has amassed a relatively sizable cult following, including a couple issues of a comic book sequel series. Director Brian Yuzna, who was the producer of the late great director Stuart Gordon's classic Reanimator and From Beyond, and what those early films he produced have in common is extreme gross-out humor and absurdly campy horror elements that Society shares in spades. However, after the success of Reanimator, Yuzna still had a lot of trouble getting many successive projects off the ground, most of them falling through due to a lack of a director. This includes Gordon dropping out of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids that Yuzna was producing at the time, and Dan O'Brien dropping out of a movie called The Men about all men secretly being aliens. Because of that, Yuzna decided to try his hand at directing himself. Since he had the rights to the sequel of Reanimator, which he would end up making a year after this film called Bride of Reanimator, he was able to leverage that to a 2-picture deal, with the stipulation that he got to make Society first, knowing that it would then for sure get made. As a director, Yuzna does a great job creating and maintaining a heightened, surreal tone that emphasizes Billy's growing paranoia, evoking other paranoid horror films like Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Invaders from Mars. Yuzna's use of canted angles and stylized lighting keeps the audience on edge and disoriented, especially as the truth of Billy's family and the world around him becomes more clear and more frightening and dangerous. The performances also help sell the oscillating tone, especially Bill's adoptive inhuman family, who play their role trolls with stereotypically waspy indifference and coldness, then camp it up when the ritual during the climax begins. But Billy Warlock, again, cool name, who's the son of Dick Warlock, famous stuntman, and Michael Myers in Halloween 2, gives a good performance as well. He's able to remain likable and relatable, even when his character somewhat does and says some shitty things.
That confidence or what? Matter of good breeding, Milo?
But also sells the growing paranoia and alienation well, which is important for a film that deals extensively with those themes. There's also Bill's main antagonist, played with slimy, unearned cockiness by Ben Meyerson, who is the preening avatar of all trust fund assholes everywhere. Furthermore, the score by composers Mark Ryder and Phil Davies helps with the film's themes of unease and paranoia, giving society a classic 80s synth horror sound that evokes the best of the era, even though it wasn't released in the US until 1992. While also having fun when the film calls for it, as the film is as much a satire and comedy as it is a horror thriller. In fact, the contrast is what makes the film work, as the humor and absurdity helps the political satire and themes of class consciousness go down much smoother than they otherwise might have. The script by Rick Fry and Woody Keith, who both ended up working with director Yuzna in his next film, Bride of a Reanimator, is as concerned with prescient themes of wealth inequality, corrupt power structures.
You have a bright future ahead of you. We may have an internship for you this summer in Washington.
And the inherent flaw in truth about capitalism laid bare, especially as we've currently seen with how the lack of labor by the current pandemic causing the entire country to turn to a standstill.
The lockdowns and travel restrictions to contain the virus, businesses coming to an abrupt halt globally.
Where the rich and powerful take out stocks and give themselves raises and ask for trillion-dollar bailouts of taxpayers' money. In fact, Yuzna wasn't really interested in the blood and gore of his early collaborations with Stuart Gordon, and instead wanted to focus on things that were more macabre and surreal rather than exploitative or gory. This brings us back to the aforementioned infamous shunting scene, which is the climatic set piece of the entire film. First off, this scene is a visual marvel, with inventive and grotesque character designs that are apparently modeled after nightmares director Yuzna used to have. They were also based off famous Salvador Dali paintings like The Great Masturbator and Autumnal Cannibalism, with such memorable scenes as fingers digging into a screaming David, a literal butt head, and someone's face morphing into a giant hand. That's unlike most anything you'll ever see on film. This was all thanks to Japanese special makeup artist Screaming Mad George, real name Joji Tani, who also worked on Big Trouble in Little China, The Guyver, and The Abyss as a sculptor and special effects person, as well as multiple large tubs of KY jelly. However, what's most important is that the shunting scene, beyond its visual and surrealist power, it also helped drive home the themes the film had been setting up the entire time. It shows the rich as less than human, an amorphous blob of class solidarity that literally and explicitly consumes the poor.
Didn't you know, Billy boy? The rich have always sucked off low-class shit like you.
With no regard for empathy or remorse. It positions the rich as leeches on society, takers, not givers, and ultimately undeserving of their wealth, power, and status, especially as it is built on the suffering and humiliation of the lower classes. It's not subtle, but doesn't make it any more true, powerful, and most importantly, prescient. So, if you want to join the society, it's available on Amazon Prime, Tubi, as well as DVD, Blu-ray, and most digital rental services. Its issues of class disparity and wealth inequality are as prescient as ever, if not even more so. So, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. If you have any other suggestions for us, please leave them in the comments below.
You're going to make a wonderful contribution to society.